Welcome, viewers, to episode 73 of the ForensicWeek.com show, brought to you by Forensic IQ Incorporated. I'm your host, Tom Moriello, CEO of Forensic IQ and professor at the University of Maryland Department of Criminology and Criminal Justice in College Park, Maryland. Tonight, CrimePad, the future of criminal investigation collaboration. CrimePad by Visionations, LLC, is an on-scene case management tool that allows all the players involved in the investigation to keep a complete electronic record of all the activities in the criminal investigation and ensure that you have a centralized place for all of your data from crime scene to crime lab and everywhere in between. But first, let me introduce our ForensicWeek.com crew this evening. We have Laura Pachuki. She's the producer of our show, a graduate student from the George Washington University Forensic Sciences Department, graduating this semester and complaining to us already that she's studying for comprehensive exams. So don't expect too much from her in the next couple of weeks. Laura Pachuki. And also, we have Jamal Francis from the University of Maryland, undergraduate student in sociology. He is our co-producer and also involved in creating some fantastic visuals and graphics and videos to upgrade our show and make it better. He's also done some things in our YouTube channel to make it easier for you to be able to find various shows, because there's 73 of them out there. Well, tell our viewers how to ask questions, make comments, and keep watching.
All right. Hey, everyone, and thank you for watching ForensicWeek.com. If you have any questions, comments, or ideas for future shows, please email us at forensicweek@gmail.com. If you're watching the show live and you have a question for one of our guests, you can use the comment box below and we'll bring that up on air. You can also tweet us at Forensic Week. If you like this episode, please click the subscribe button on YouTube. You can watch all archive shows 24/7 online at forensicweek.com. You can also find us on Facebook by searching the ForensicWeek.com show. Like and share our page. Thanks, and back to you, Tom.
Thank you, Laura. Thank you, Laura. Folks, you're watching ForensicWeek.com, a talk show that features real forensic science by real forensic scientists, educators, law enforcement, and legal professionals who find, collect, and examine forensic evidence in the performance of their duties. Broadcast live on your desktop and mobile devices on Thursday evenings, 7 to 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, live on our YouTube channel, www.forensicweek.com. We are a proud member of the Hangout10.com live TV webcast network, which is a series of shows brought to you live using Google+, a social networking service. Jamal, could you introduce our guest this evening?
Sure. So Jeff brings a unique blend of forensic training and information technology experience to Visionations. For more than 16 years, he's been entrenched in the forensic and law enforcement community by providing forensic analyses in the fields of latent print, comparisons, and bloodstain pattern analysis. His career began at Northern Illinois Police Crime Laboratory, where he served as a latent print examiner, crime scene response coordinator, and bloodstain pattern analyst. He is still actively performing forensic examinations as a consultant in the areas of crime scene, latent, and bloodstain evidence for law enforcement departments across the nation. Jeff has a BS degree in both forensic science and criminal justice from Michigan State University, as well as an MBA from DePaul University. He's also served as a project manager for over a decade with the leading laboratory information management systems company, Porter Lee, implementing the BEAST in scores of forensic laboratories and police departments across the U.S. and tailoring the product for each lab's specific needs.
Thank you. Jeff, thank you so much for being here.
Well, I appreciate the invitation. I'm very excited to be here as well.
Yes, we're sorry that Dr. Jane Holmeyer was unable to be here. She had some technical difficulties, so she said she'd be listening in. So Jane, if you're listening, sorry you won't be with us, but maybe you can meet us in a future show. Jeff, you and I met down in Orlando, Florida, a couple of months ago at the American Academy of Forensic Sciences conference. and I walked by and I saw the sign CrimePad, and I remember walking over and saying, "Excuse me, what is CrimePad?" So I'm going to ask you that question right here because it captured me for a long time after that, to a point where we needed to have you here today. So why don't you tell our viewers a little bit about what CrimePad is?
So CrimePad, the way we like to phrase it, is a professional-grade mobile application that basically, what it boils down to, is an active case investigative management system. So that we have tools in there for everyone that's participating on an investigation to both record and consume data in real time to further and advance the investigation at a much more efficient pace. We kind of came up with CrimePad as soon as the iPads were actually announced several years ago, that iPad introduced those. We thought, what a great piece of hardware for those that are in mobile professions. And what is more mobile than criminal investigation? Police officers, crime scene investigators, death investigators, all out in the field. And here's a device that kind of lends itself to those occupations. And so we wanted to build a framework and a platform on which everyone can enter their data in a very easy, manageable way, and share that data amongst each other so that we can further the investigation.
Okay, that sounds really, really good. How do you get organizations with, different divisions within an organization, and then different organizations like the police, crime scene folks, sometimes they're not part of the police, the crime lab, the medical examiner. How do you get all these different organizations to own up and accept one management system?
Well, everyone considers the information important, and especially there are things that are relevant to each one of those functional areas. The police department and the detectives are very focused on canvassing and focused on interviewing, but in doing so, they kind of rely on information that potentially can come from a crime scene. And so crime scene investigators are putting in and generating, collecting evidence and basically processing the scene. That information can be very valuable to those that are out interviewing suspects, witnesses, and so on and so forth. And so, and conversely, you have investigators that are collecting information from various witnesses that may help crime scene investigators kind of narrow their focus in a given area for processing for evidence, especially if they have a very large crime scene. So just in that example, from point to point, we have different functional units that actually would gain a lot from the information that each other has. If you enter the laboratory into the mix, laboratories are, they get basically dumped with submissions of evidence from all kinds of cases, and many times the submission rate of that evidence is very large. And so if the crime lab is actually involved in the actual upfront processing, meaning that they're collaborating with the crime scene investigators, then they're able to actually start weeding out and sifting through what evidence should actually make it to the laboratory versus what should be collected and just stored at the department. So you can see that there's actually relevance to the information that each one of these functional areas is collecting, and it actually aids in their own job, making their own jobs more efficient. And if every one of these individual entities is becoming more efficient, you naturally can see the progress of how an investigation can carry forward. So it's a very easy sell to see that, hey, you mean I can get this piece of information that I used to have to wait, or I used to have to call, or may never get. Now I will have access to that information in real time, and that's kind of an easy sell for many of these functional areas. So,
I think two of the most significant problems in criminal investigations were starting, well, probably before O.J. Simpson, maybe starting with Lizzie Borden in 1892, is two things: poor collaboration, and obviously CrimePad attempts to eliminate that. And the other thing is standardization, ensuring that you do the same things each time and not forget to do those things. So collaboration and standards, I think, are the two most important things. When I work for the defense now, I look at those two factors in the case. I look to see if it's an arson and homicide, what did the arson investigator say, and what did the homicide investigator say, and did they ever talk to each other? And what are the crime scene photographs? Lots of times evidence technicians take really good pictures of real good evidence that never get processed because nobody ever said to get it processed. But the problem is they were photographed. I mean, I had a case in Baltimore where they said they never found the murder weapon. This guy had his head bashed in. There was a 3-foot metal pipe sitting next to the body that was photographed that never got collected. But they had great photographs of it. So if in fact CrimePad can help alleviate those things, certainly that'll be helpful. Now, on your website, you indicate that you now are serving approximately 250 agencies across the country. I'm sure they're using it in different ways. Generally, how are they using it, and how do they get trained to use it?
So we do provide training to our customers, either by doing some phone support, or we actually go out to our customers. When we have some of our larger customers, we do go out and train individuals. It is a very intuitive program, and so it doesn't take a lot of training to get used to. But we do train them, and they are different functional areas. When we first launched, we actually launched on the App Store approximately 2 years ago, and it was basically a standalone application, and Apple unfortunately doesn't reveal who. Well, I shouldn't say unfortunate. They don't reveal, for privacy purposes, who's downloading what apps. And so there were many times, and many of our customers, we didn't realize were customers because they were downloading and starting to use it right away. We didn't know about them until they actually called and asked questions or asked for a little bit of support. So we have quite a variance of individuals within departments. We have crime scene. So crime scene is obviously a very prevalent one of our users, and they're kind of using it obviously in that capacity. And we have a decent amount of detectives as well. But I think the lost part of this is also in the supervisors and the chiefs and the administrators of these departments, who are often asked by the media, "Hey, what's the status?" So if you have a high-profile case, hey, we have a lot of questions for you, and whether or not that the administrator or the chief or the sheriff is willing to give that information, that's a different story. But even they themselves may not know that information, and so it's an easy way for supervisors to kind of keep tabs of the investigation as a whole. Now, the way we designed CrimePad is making it scalable so that even the major incidents, mass casualty. I have some friends who were working the Columbine case out in Colorado, and they had 75 crime scene investigators respond. Now they're from all these different entities, and can you imagine what currently is being done for those that don't have something like CrimePad? They're doing everything by pen and paper, and then you imagine trying to assimilate all of that data and how much of that is actually being lost once it makes it to its final form. And so, we kind of built CrimePad to allow for collaboration amongst people working on an investigation, even if they come from different jurisdictions. And so we have had instances, once we've launched CrimePad, of that kind of collaboration. So people are using it not only for collaborating on an individual case between one functional area and another, but also collaborating from one jurisdiction to another, especially on a major incident.
Some police officers may say, well, sometimes we need to withhold certain information as an investigative lead that we don't want to get out at this point in time. So what would you say to them?
Well, that's true, but it's not like this. This information is still within the department. It's still within the investigative team. So it's not like they're pushing it out to the media. This is not. There's not a Twitter feed that automatically launches from CrimePad or anything like that. It is merely a tool for those working on an investigation, and we have rules and security levels and roles within CrimePad to restrict viewing, even in a high-profile case. Not everyone in the department may have access to view such information. So,
Okay, what I'd like to do is I'm gonna I'd like to have the viewers see CrimePad. So if you can get that ready, and then let me just talk to the viewers now. When we talk about CrimePad, we're talking about all the activities from when the uniform officer responds, the investigators, evidence technicians, the medical examiners. Integrating photographs, sketches, reporting. Reporting is probably one of the most important things. Okay, that was quick, Jeff. So why don't you kind of walk us through a little bit and give a big picture of what an individual would expect in CrimePad?
Yeah, so in CrimePad, when you log in, you actually are presented with the cases that you have access to, and I'm already inside a case. If I back out here, this will be a list of all the cases that I'm involved with, and so it's very visual. Now, just so you know, what I'm showing you is actually the web version of CrimePad, which behaves and navigates exactly the same as the iPad version, which is downloadable at the App Store. So you go into the case, and we kind of break it down. And when we enter the case, we kind of enter into what I refer to as the investigative layer, meaning this is where an investigator would see at the his or her level the leads that are generated, and you can kind of have your toolbar down here at the bottom where you have scenes, leads, notes, interviews, photos, and warrant information. This is kind of what you would see a toolbox for detectives and investigators that way. If we go another layer in, here we're looking at various scenes. If I go into this first scene here, we kind of break things down into elements, and this is where the crime scene investigator can document and collect all the bits and pieces of information of all the kinds of data that they are coming across. And the whole thing here, and kind of backing off a little bit, is that CrimePad is really about managing and collecting and maintaining a high level quality of the data that's being encountered. If you look at it from a historical perspective, when you have someone who's simply writing on pen and paper, what they're doing is they're deciding what information to enter. So if they forget something, it's never going to be on that piece of paper. If you're presented with a form, like some people have actually adopted worksheets, they're kind of prompted as to what kinds of information to collect. And so it kind of makes that layer of quality and routine a whole lot better, and it increases that level of quality. So,
if I could stop you for a second, yeah. I've written a textbook called Criminal Investigation Handbook by Matthew Bender, and one of the key things I did in each one of my chapters is I put significant lists on each type of a crime of the things to consider, the types of evidence that are synonymous with a certain type of crime. So you're indicating that you have certain lists in CrimePad also that they can go down?
Yeah, so for instance, if I have a firearm, and I'm just going to go into, we break things down into elements, and so here's just one of the elements is what we refer to as an evidence element. And so within the evidence element, we are prompting as to defining what the evidence number is, where did you locate that evidence, the date and the time you observed it, any processing prior to collection, and incidentally, when we go to the description, if you choose a firearm, we prompt you for manufacturer and model and caliber and serial number and these fields. So it's dynamically creating these fields based on what you're filling out. So that if I'm just on a piece of paper and I find a gun, I might say one handgun, Ithaca US, and that's it. I might not put the model, I might not put the caliber because I may not know it, nor I might forget to write that down. Whereas CrimePad's presenting you with this saying, hey, you might want to capture these pieces of information. So,
Okay, so any documentation about the gun from the time it's found through into the lab, it's already in there once, so you're not going to make a mistake. Because one of the problems I see, again, as a forensic consultant looking for discrepancies in reporting is, whether the numbers change. So after CrimePad captures the description of a gun, it's in there, and nobody has to add anything to it or enter it again, correct?
That's correct. And so that's really the whole concept is you enter it one time and it's contemporaneous to when you're actually collecting it. So that's the shortest amount of time, the duration between collection and logging it in, as opposed to, hey, I've collected this, now I'm going to package it, and now I'm going to take some notes once I collect a few items. So if you're doing it contemporaneous, there's no re-entry, there's no duplication, there's no transcriptional errors. It's all contemporaneous, and that's going to give you the highest quality of recording of that data. And it stays that way through the lifetime of that item of evidence in this example.
Now where it says analysis in the middle column on the bottom, is that the analysis by the examiner in the lab?
Right, so this would be like if I'm collecting this firearm, there might be a purpose for why I'm collecting it, because I would know that there's going to be, I want forensic analysis performed. So for this firearm, I might say, I want any one of these, so I might want that examined for fingerprints. I might want it also for serial number restoration. I might just want it for fired evidence examination or firearm examination. So I can actually put in some of the things, the reason why I'm collecting it and what it should be sent on for, so that it gives the laboratory a notion of what should be done with a firearm, because there are a lot of things that could be done with a firearm once it's submitted to the laboratory. So, and that goes for all these other, various other different types of evidence and analyses.
And are you suggesting to the staff who uses CrimePad to literally bring their iPads to the scene and start entering data right at the beginning, rather than take notes?
Exactly. So we're using the device. That's the whole. A lot of departments have purchased iPads already. With the notion that they can check their email, and there's the Note app, but they know that there's something there. They know it's going to provide value to them, but they just don't know. Like, there's nothing really there to tie it all together, and that's what we're doing here. Is we're giving them a platform in which they can record everything in a centralized area. So instead of going in and taking notes, and if you've got 4 people, each one of the 4 are taking their own set of notes, which could be all handwritten, and typically the process then is to go back to the department or wherever your headquarters is and transcribe it into a report to make it a little bit cleaner. And so we're trying to eliminate that step, that duplication of effort, in providing for tools to either record just a generic note, and we have that within CrimePad, where you can just start with a note and just take a quick note, and you can just type it or voice to text if you have that capability on your iPad, and you can dictate some things in here to take quick notes as you go.
Okay. Very good. Why don't you get yourself out of there? Otherwise, we'll forget what you look like.
You probably do want to forget what I look like.
No, not at all. One of the things I wanted to talk about, Jeff, is more traditional law enforcement types are going to say, "Wait a minute, I want narrative reporting." And I remember when I was chief of polygraph in the federal government, some of my managers were complaining that our new agents, our new polygraph examiners, were not good writers. And I said, well, I don't think it's that they're not good writers. They just don't write like you. They didn't learn to write prose like we did because it was not. They don't think that way. They think in in bullets, short. If you think of texting, that's how they think and talk. That's how they send messages. That's how they communicate.
Mm-hmm.
How are the more traditional folks dealing with this type of reporting?
So one thing to keep in mind is that everyone is really out to do the best job that they possibly can. And in doing so, they also want to spend more time doing the things that they're trained to do, as opposed to spending a lot of time generating a report. If we can generate a narrative report based on the things that you're entering into CrimePad, then we've really accomplished the same. We've tackled this two birds with one stone. I'm sure searching for the cliche, but I just couldn't grasp it. So
I feel like if CrimePad is just absolutely ideal. I feel like there's no reason folks shouldn't want to use it. It just makes things uniform across the board. It makes things much cleaner, as you described, and I just think all around it's great. It's a great program.
Yeah, I mean what we're really trying to accomplish here is we don't want to take away the narrative report. We don't want to take away that crime scene report, but we know that when you've written out your notes traditionally, when you've written out your notes, and then you go to sit down and write a report, you shouldn't be adding anything. Everything from your report should be coming from your notes. And so what you're really doing is you're translating what's in your notes to the report, and computers can take that same kind of logical approach and do it for you.
Much more efficiently, too.
Right, much more without any errors and without any omissions and things like that. So let's say, for instance, and I'm just going to give you a for instance for like a generic crime scene report. A generic crime scene report basically says, at this date and this time, these people responded to this location, and here's everything we did, and here's everything we found, and here's everything we collected, and this is when we left. Now, you can see already a little bit with CrimePad, you're already entering all those different data points already. So we can take those data points and actually construct narrative sentences to actually build a narrative report if that's if that's what people are looking for. And so that narrative can be grabbed from the access in and out of the scene, the evidence that's collected, even your notes. You might have a note that you just free typed, and that free typed notes or free dictated notes can actually be inserted into the body of a report. And so it does take a little bit of that prose away, like the traditionalists of writing technique. It does kind of take a little bit of that art away, but you kind of sacrifice that for all of the positive gains that you get from having complete quality data coming in.
Are crime scene investigators thinking, okay, I'm trying to, with my writing, I want to be as artistic? I feel like it's more of, you're looking for more efficiency. So, like I said, there's no reason, that you shouldn't want to support this kind of program or, implement it in your department.
Yeah, so we're not paying Jamal anything for his comments, so that everyone is.
I'm just breaking it down logically. This is my personal perspective, my personal point of view. So.
Yeah, so
Jamal is looking for logic. He's saying he's still a student. Don't forget, okay?
Yep.
Logic doesn't always prevail, Jamal. That's the problem, okay?
Okay.
Does this make sense? Of course it makes sense.
Yeah.
Is it something that should be done? Of course it should be done. But there's really some political issues, Sure. For example, each one of these players are managed, and their performance is based on separate organizations, okay? Mm-hmm. So everybody's sometimes always afraid to let anybody see anyone else's work until they can personally sign off on it. So if there is something done wrong, the manager doesn't feel like, I couldn't control that. It was out there before I got a chance to see it, which is a good question. Jeff, if I manage all the evidence technicians, and my evidence technicians are out there, and they're using CrimePad, and they're entering stuff in there, does a supervisor have to sign off on anything before it actually becomes part of the bigger report, or does it just become part of the bigger report?
So it can be so different departments may operate under different rules. One of the things that we're building, and we are just at the beginning, like crime, we have at least a year and a half worth of features already lined up in our roadmap, our development roadmap. And so, one of the things that we're coming out with probably in the next couple weeks, or about a month and a half, is our custom reporting, which includes a layer of review, which means that, yeah, we're collecting all of these things, and yes, we can generate a report, but that report really doesn't become official nor distributable until someone actually signs off on it. And so while CrimePad can share information within the investigators working on and collaborating on the case, as far as like the screens that we just kind of walked through, nothing's official until someone actually generates a report based on all of that information and can then sign off and then distribute that to those who might need it. So for instance, you might have a district attorney or even a defense attorney who's been given access to CrimePad, but because of their roles, they can only see reports. And maybe those reports, they're the ones that, after having been fully reviewed, are what they're going to have access to. Maybe not all the individual screens, but they might be able to get those reports. And so there you can see efficiencies without having to call, hey, we need a copy of this report, we need a copy of that report. They can actually get it themselves in real time. And that's actually one of the reasons, some of our customers were actually initially interested because this district attorney, or the attorney general, in fact, was very interested in getting information prior to everything coming back to him via the other means, via sitting down with debriefing meetings, by waiting for reports to come in. They actually wanted to see this information up front, because in the end, district attorneys, prosecuting attorneys, they're the ones that make the determination as to whether or not case goes forward. And so, they're a big part of this as well.
I just wanted to say that exactly. The prosecutor is really the process owner of from beginning to end. One of my complaints is, why is the process owner at the end of the process? So are they getting access to all the data at the same time?
I mean, it depends on who. It varies by agency to agency. Some agencies have very close-knit relationship with their district attorney, and they were part of the project, and others maybe not as much. And so the more that those are intertwined, those agencies are intertwined, the more that they provide access and really use CrimePad for what it's really made for, is that collaborative tool. Now, this collaboration is more than just, I also want to emphasize, is more than just like share this data. It's allowing for cases to be worked by not just the people working for the agency, but you might actually call on external resources to bring them into a case. For instance, and that can be anywhere in the world. So for instance, if I'm working on a case, or someone's working on a bloodstain case, as an example, and they come across a bloodstain pattern that they may not understand, well, I can go to my list of experts and actually call up within CrimePad and walk someone through a scene and say, hey, what do you think of this pattern? And I can and they might be calling Jeff because he's a bloodstain guy, and say, hey, Jeff, what do you think of this? And I can give them some direction as to, how to collect, what it might mean, what next steps you might want to do, how to document. And so what it really does, and this is going to I firmly believe that the nature of crime laboratories, forensic laboratories, and crime scene response is going to fundamentally change in the next few years, because now we're allowing multiple people with that expertise into the scene when it's freshest, and making it much more efficient in its collection and ultimately the resolution of the case. So we know what evidence needs to be collected, we see what needs to be analyzed, and we can go forward. Now, there's a whole contextual bias issue that comes into that, but there are ways to mitigate those by having functional case managers at the outset, and so on and so forth. But All that is to say is that this collaboration of different areas, the political things that you're talking that we've touched on, everyone ultimately wants the case to be done right and adjudicated properly, and getting obviously the correct people to answer to their offenses. And so everyone has that in their goal. And so CrimePad's just giving the platform for fostering that collaboration, whether that means grabbing an expert from Australia or talking to a lead detective at NYPD who may have seen this kind of pattern of MO before. And so everyone is no longer in their siloed off department. You actually can start to reach out and get information and get expertise into these cases, where, especially when you're talking about smaller departments who really don't have a whole lot of expertise or experience with a given type of case, they also can reach out and garner that expertise into the case.
Can you search all the cases that you would have in CrimePad to look for common MOs, common weapons, something that might help in a particular case? In other words, somebody may have handled a case months ago and it's sitting there, and some similar things were done then and done again now. Will it find those things?
So it will within the department's database. So within the individual department's database, that would be very easy to do. And the data, the analytics behind that and the big data can be done within a given agency. The thing about CrimePad is that every agency has their own database, and they're not intermixed or anything for obvious security purposes. However, I do see down the road, when we start building these databases for each one of these individual departments, there might become some regionalization where you might be able to search on a more regional or even on a national level to kind of get that. But that would involve the collaboration, pardon the overuse of the term, but that would involve the buy-in of multiple agencies saying, hey, yes, I want to make my data available so that other agencies can also search and find commonalities, and we can start doing that big data analytics over all of the things that are being collected at the outset.
It's so hard to get everybody to use the same standards. When you think of some of the national standards that the Attorney General has put out, like on photo arrays and various steps for a death investigation, etc. Sometimes they'll take those standards. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to see an example of some check-off lists or standards, where somebody can go in and you have a list of things that they should be looking at. Can you show us something like that?
Well, we're building in. We don't have the quality checklist, but one thing we are building in is when you check out of a scene, when you leave a scene, we evaluate all of the data elements that you've put in, and we prompt the user for, hey, you might want to do this because we see you didn't do that. For instance, I'll give you an example. If you've got a burglary and you do collect latent prints, if you don't also have elimination prints, then we will prompt the officer or the user to say, hey, you're leaving here without collecting eliminations. It'll let you go forward, but we're giving you some prompts to make sure that, hey, don't forget about this. Or if you've got certain kinds of, like you were mentioning before, if you've got certain kinds of offenses, make sure these kinds of things that you're recording, because they are more important, or these are things you would focus on for these kinds of offenses. So we do have that in the pipeline for references and the quality checklists.
Good. The medical examiner and the forensic investigator that goes to the scene to represent the medical examiner has certain responsibilities in reference to recording the body, etc. A lot of his or her responsibilities are very similar to the crime scene investigators. And what they're doing is they're both doing it themselves. And again, as a defense, forensic consultant, I look at this, and when I start seeing, for example, I had a case where our client was arrested for killing, for allegedly overdosing her husband. And there were all kinds of prescription drugs all over the scene, and every time the pills are listed in a report, there's the numbers of the pills change. They're different. All the photographs of the body. The police took photographs. The forensic investigator took photographs. They weren't the same. Certain photographs weren't taken because they thought the other guy took the photographs. So how is the medical examiner fitting? I know how they should fit in, but are they cooperating and are they becoming part of this?
Well, I could tell you that for sure the death investigation community is really interested in this. As when we met at the Academy meeting a couple months ago, we had a lot of interest from medical examiners' offices because this is the same kind of work. They do the similar kinds of scene processing, scene data collection. That's really what it is. It's your data collection at the scene. They just have a different perspective of that. And so I always thought, and this is something that even from the outset of CrimePad, is that CrimePad would be a tool that we would see law enforcement use, and we would kind of tweak it and make a separate application using the same database but separate window to that data for death investigators. Because as you mentioned, death investigators, they're interested in medications, they're interested in the next of kin notifications, and hospital information, because they're not only doing criminal deaths, they're also doing hospital deaths or natural deaths or home, that kind of stuff. And
many times at the scene, you're not even sure if it's a criminal death or not. It's an unexpected death until somebody determines it to be a crime.
That's right. And so what we kind of have this overall view that what we're doing, whether or not they're using a death investigator application or CrimePad or whatever, we're having everything stored in a centralized database, which basically controls the story of the event. And that story would be available in bits and pieces for the death investigators, for their relevant information, for crime scene investigators, for their relevant, for detectives, for district attorneys, for courts, judges, for defense attorneys, so that we're managing the complete story of the event and giving them separate windows to that information where it's relevant for their individual use, for their functional use, if that makes sense.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, let's talk a little bit about how you market a product like this or a concept like this. Are you going to the police? Are you going to the crime labs? Are you trying to get them all together? You're trying to get buy-in together? How is that? How are you approaching agencies?
So we definitely we have a huge focus on police departments and laboratories, because those two areas are the ones that we really see the most, that really handle crime scenes. Even though CrimePad has has investigative tools, and there's a huge crime scene component. That crime scene component seems to be the void that people are really trying to fill, because it is a very complex task and can be very arduous. And so this really is something that speaks to them. And so we have marketed largely to police departments and to forensic laboratories, namely because that's kind of where our backgrounds come from. We have between Jane and myself, we have quite an extensive network throughout the country with these various police departments and forensic labs. And so we market to crime scene investigators, and so we attend shows such as the American Academy of Forensic Science, such as the International Association for Identification, and there's some new ones, the International Crime Scene Investigators Association, and various regional organizations. And once we get into, I have a customer within a given state or region, we start to attend the chiefs of police conferences in that area, because what really happens is once people are actually using it out the field, they become salesmen themselves, because people see them using it and they think, wow, that's cool. Is this something we could use? And that's how things kind of snowball. And so we have marketed largely to laboratories and police departments, because that's where we see CrimePad having the greatest fit. However, we are seeing a lot more death investigators / medical examiners express a lot of interest. And so it's not going to take a whole lot to kind of build a separate app for it that's kind of tailored specifically to them.
A lot of our viewers are students
Mm-hmm.
who are looking, they may be criminal justice majors, they may be still in high school and not sure what they want to do, and they're always, looking at, okay, are there jobs out there? A lot of people major in criminal justice, and I'm sure, because you've gone through programs like myself, they go through criminal justice not because they want to be police officers. They like the investigative process. They want to be part of it somehow.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess I asked the question, when somebody purchases a tool like yours, is there a job out there for somebody? Is there somebody who's responsible for making the product work on a daily basis and ensuring that police officers out in the field can go to make sure that things are working right, and et cetera?
Well, certainly. I mean, there's, when I hear your question, I think of a lot of different ways to kind of answer, because I have a big perspective on the criminal justice community, forensic community within this country, especially. But from a software perspective, there's no question that technology is ruling the day when it comes to criminal justice, and opportunities really lie. That's where the opportunity really lies, is in the technology sector as it applies to investigations. Because what we're seeing is that there's a lot of, and this happens not only from an police department perspective, but also from a crime laboratory perspective. You know the problems. Everyone knows the problems that are out there right now. We have backlogs that are in crime laboratories, and so everyone's trying to find the faster, more efficient way of doing things so that we don't have these backlogs. Crime is continuous, unfortunately. It's a steady business that we're all trying to reduce, and so
it keeps us working, Jeff.
It does keep us working, but we can always strive to. We're always striving for CrimePad version 7 that eliminates crime. We're still working on that module, but
we can't eliminate crime. We can move it.
That's right.
Move it away from our jurisdiction.
That is true. That is true. But we want to make sure that people are accountable for it, and so hopefully that can serve as some sort of deterrent. But it's a whole separate philosophical discussion. But when we're talking about opportunities for criminal justice students and criminal justice professionals and going forward, I think technology plays a major component in that. And anyone who's studying in these fields, make sure that you brush up on technology. Like, if you can learn computers, learn even code. Like, I actually tell my son that no matter what field you want to go in, make sure you learn how to code, because ultimately you're going to provide so much more value to whatever job that you ultimately get, because you will have that component in your toolbox, that skill set in your toolbox. And so when you can apply that to existing problems, then you become a whole lot more marketable. And that's something I would definitely stress. So.
And that's exactly what I'm telling my students this semester. We at the University of Maryland have the honor to be able to we're using CrimePad as part of the mock crime scene exercise, where I have 3 full-size crime scenes. Students are assigned to each one, and they work that crime scene throughout the semester. And what they've done in the past is at the end they have to give me a PowerPoint presentation presenting all their information, all their their photographs, all their analysis. If they made any fingerprint identifications, they have to show that, etc. And each group in the there's 9 groups every semester. Each one was significantly different depending on the quality of the skill of the students using graphics and everything else. This semester we're using CrimePad, thanks to Jeff and Jane who've given it to us to use. I told these students, you will not appreciate what you're doing because, of course, this is an added thing that they got to learn now. I said you will appreciate this because when you start going into the business, whether it be CrimePad or another version or another vendor's similar product, you will be 5, 6, 7 steps ahead of anybody because you will have used it. And when they hear that, that'll be a plus for you. Now, Jeff, I got to ask you, are there other companies out there that have similar products?
There are some companies that have some apps out there for law enforcement. I think most of them are like form builder kind of applications where, it's basically worksheet replacement where they can generate worksheets and kind of like build their own field sets to collect things, and they might take a photo, the storage of take a photo with your phone and take a sketch with your device. So there are some out there. Naturally, we feel we're light years ahead of all of them. But you're seeing the landscape kind of change now, where utilizing these devices, not just tablets, it's also phones. I mean, you're smart. Everyone's these days has a smartphone, and if we can build apps for it that are relevant to your everyday job, it becomes so much more powerful. Incidentally, the iPhone version of CrimePad will be coming out very, very soon.
Okay, so it hasn't come out yet, right?
No, the iPhone version is probably about a month away.
Okay, that's why I couldn't find it. Okay, very good.
I have a couple of questions for Jeff, actually.
Go ahead, Laura.
All right. Well, the first one is for when you have photos of the evidence or of the crime scene, are you taking those with a camera and importing them later into the app, or are you taking them with your iPad? And then also with sketches, are you using the app to create the sketches, or are you also importing that later?
Great question. So the first question when it comes to photos is both. The cameras that are on your devices now are not going to be full DSLR replacement quality images. The reason we have photos, and you see it even within CrimePad, you saw some photos with some of the elements in there. We're using that for reference shots, so it helps you navigate through the app. So I might take a quick photo of a firearm just to document, hey, that's a firearm, this is what I'm about to record all this information about, but it's not going to be your final evidentiary shot. And so we still are going to see people are taking their full digital cameras and taking hundreds and couple hundred photos at a scene, and then upload those into CrimePad afterwards for safekeeping. So we do allow for recording and attaching any kind of file to CrimePad. So it's within the same case. So when you look at it, CrimePad actually functions as a digital image management system as well as a case management system. We're really trying to give everything about the case in a centralized area so that those that need to consume it can consume it without having to go to 5 different systems to get that data. So the answer obviously is yes, you can take it with the device and also import from your camera elsewhere. When it comes to the sketching, when we first launched, we thought there's a lot of free sketching apps out there that are native for iPads, and so rather than build that in, we can have those sketches in a different app just imported into CrimePad so that we have it for safekeeping. We do intend to create a kind of a sketching crime scene specific application, but we wanted to launch CrimePad well before we waited for that, because that might extend things a little bit, because those sketching components take a little bit to incorporate. So that's it. that's another thing. And we're building annotation also in there, which, you know, sketches have their place, and the further we get in technology-wise, the more we're starting to see, you know, sketches may or may not be as relevant anymore because we're able to capture images and video and make 3D images of crime scenes. And so more and more we get down that path, the less reliant that we might be on sketches. Now, they do have their place. There's definitely areas that, you know, hey, we want to take a quick sketch, take a quick sketch. But that's why we haven't launched with sketching tools with inside CrimePad, because there are a slew of them already available that are for free. I mean, there's a bunch of them that way. That I like to do that.
Laura, did you have any other questions?
Yeah, I just had another quick one. Is there a known error rate when using CrimePad based on like using the drop-down menus? Like you were showing us when you put in a firearm and there's like a drop-down menu and everything. Do people maybe select the wrong information compared to if you're just writing it? You know, you're just writing it so it's correct.
Yeah. So one thing I will say specifically about the firearms. You know, we've actually imported the general rifling characteristics database from the ATF, so that when you choose a specific firearm, the model selection is actually narrowed down just to that manufacturer. And when you choose that model, then the caliber is narrowed down to what available calibers that model.
So if you choose the wrong gun, you won't even have those second subcategories underneath.
Right.
Is what you're
well,
saying.
you have them, but the values would be markedly different than what you have in front of you. So there is some quality controls in there. As far as error rates, which sounds like a very legal term that I'm wondering who's saying that, you know, there are error rates in everything, in writing things, even in writing things down. Because, you know, what happens a lot is people write things down after the fact, not contemporaneous to when they're actually doing it. So there is that game of telephone that actually can happen even within one person's mind, from the time they're actually responding to a scene to the time they're actually documenting it. And so, yes, there's user errors that people can have with choosing the wrong thing in a drop-down menu. But we have that review process. Yeah.
I'm going to jump in there because I see we only have 3 minutes. I'm going to give you the last word before we go off the air, but I do want to mention to our guests some of the shows upcoming in the next few months. The next show will be April 9th. We'll have NamUs, the National Missing and Unidentified Persons System. We're going to have our guest is Todd Matthews, the director of NamUs, Communications and Case Management. They are assisting agencies around the country that have cold cases or missing persons, and where some agencies have unidentified bodies. So we're going to find out exactly what they do, how they do it, and how they become an important tool for law enforcement. April 23rd, we have a real deal CSI professional, Lorena Huffman. She's a certified senior crime scene analyst with Suffolk Police Department in Suffolk, Virginia, a friend of mine, somebody I see once a year, unfortunately, at the AAFS conferences, but we look forward to having her tell us about the day in the life of a crime scene technician and how she accomplishes her job. And we'll have to ask her what she thinks about a software database like CrimePad. Yeah. April 7th, we have another forensic artist, Samantha Steinberg from Miami-Dade Police Department in Florida. Excited about having Samantha. She's also a colleague of Sandy Oslo from LA Sheriff's Office. We're going to see about the kinds of cases she's done, and she's going to tell us a little bit about how she accomplishes that for Miami-Dade Police Department. That's on May 7th. May 14th, we finally, ladies and gentlemen, we finally have a firearms identification and tool mark examiner, Christopher Faber. I hope I'm pronouncing his name correctly, from Baltimore City Crime Laboratory. Chris is going to be with us on May 14th, and we're going to hear from a firearms and tool mark examiner the kinds of evidence that they examine and how they accomplish that. So we look forward to that. And the last show that I just scheduled, June 18th, Lizzie Borden update. Again, a lot of you have heard of Lizzie Borden. Had an axe, gave her mother 40 whacks when she saw what she had done. She gave her father 41. Well, we're going to have a retrospective of the forensic analysis. We have a Dr. Stephen Kane, a psychologist from the University of Guam. He and I both were on a Discovery Channel show called Lizzie Borden Had an Axe. He did a psychological autopsy on Lizzie and has some new interesting information and research that he wants to share with us. So that'll be June 18th. I want to remind everybody that in August of this year, we are going to be at the IAI 100th anniversary celebration and educational conference in Sacramento, Sacramento, California. We're going to be doing about 3 different live shows that week at the conference. We're excited about that. We want to thank Steve Johnson, the president, for asking us to be there. Jeff, I want to thank you very much for being with us this evening. Get any last thoughts before we leave?
Well, I definitely appreciate the time and being on your show. I think this is a great outlet for students, practitioners, and forensic scientists to kind of get together and get perspectives from different people and various sources. It sounds like you have a great upcoming, and even in previous talks that you had, I think it's great for the community. If anyone has any questions, my email is actually listed below my name. Feel free to reach out to me at any time for anything regarding CrimePad, crime scene, forensic science, laboratory, pretty much anything. Bloodstain pattern analysis. Maybe that's a future show, but.
Absolutely. Well, viewers, you can't ask for any more than that. Jeff, Thank you very much. Jane out there, and thank you. Laura, Jamal, thank you very much. Viewers, thanks for watching.
Welcome to the ForensicWeek.com show. Welcome to the ForensicWeek.com show. I'm your host, Tom Moriello. This show invites experts from around the world that discuss, educate, and mentor those viewers who are interested in topics from the crime scene to the crime lab and everywhere in between. The show is broadcast live on Thursday evening, 7 p.m. to 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, then archived right here on our YouTube channel. We have listed each episode in convenient categories to make it easier for you to find a topic of interest. So if you're a student trying to learn about what career opportunities are out there for you, an educator looking for additional academic content for your courses, a practitioner who wants to increase your depth of knowledge, or the general public who just wants to know, then begin watching ForensicWeek.com right now. To stay informed about our next show, subscribe to this YouTube channel, or just go to www.forensicweek.com. Thank you for watching.